Casablanca, Mrs. Doubtfire, Iron Man. 3 widely different genres of movies, 3 widely different characters and all. But there is one thing that is very similar in all these, and that's their portrayal of masculinity in all these films. Now, in the 120 plus years of the film industry, they have constantly changed and modified our view of masculinity in film. And this has really been mirrored by our society in many applicable ways. But in order to truly understand this shift in its entirety, you need to go back to the beginning. Because this shift in its depiction, going from an overly machismo view from the early to mid 20th century to exploring the more emotional side of men in the turn of the century and the 21st century, we see a very direct correlation between our views in film and our views in real life in terms of masculinity. And so we start in the early 19th to the late 19th to early 20th century with the rise of silent films. So around this time, America was going through, or was in the midst of, the Industrial Revolution, which provided a great socioeconomic boon for our country as a whole. And by doing so, millions of immigrants migrated over to America in order to realize the American dream, as we call it. However, all these people from all these different countries, they couldn't really speak English, unfortunately. So with the rise of silent films, it was supposed to show, with the lack of sound itself, these viewers were drawn to the simple actions that we were seeing on screen. As a matter of fact, Bob Mondello wrote in a 2014 NPR post saying that film, especially when it was silent, was sort of like an instruction manual to realize the American experience. And this is really true because back in that time, not being able to hear what was being said, but in order of seeing, you could actually see how back then how the American man was supposed to be dressed, what he walked like, just the way he acted. Now, switching over to the late 20s, going into the 60s, what was known as the golden age of Hollywood, we saw the rise of a new genre known as the Westerns. Does anybody recognize who this is? Obviously, this is Clint Eastwood. Now, him, as well as other characters such as John Wayne, became the forefront of what the Western genre was supposed to embody. And with characters like him, they were supposed to present a stoic, gritty, tough experience of men trying to survive in the harshness of the West. And in addition, they also provided us with amazing one-liners that was supposed to sound very threatening. Now, excuse my impression of Clint Eastwood right now. In one particular line, he says, they say all marriages are made in heaven, but so are thunder and lightning. Now, obviously, I'm not Clint Eastwood, so I don't necessarily come off sound threatening, but I can imagine being in a 60s Western, hearing Clint Eastwood with his gun pointed at me telling me this, I would feel rather threatened. Now, probably one of the best examples in real life that I've seen that matches this sort of gritty machismo kind of look would be in the form of American GIs. Now, in the world wars that we've seen that these people have fought in, we look to these GIs as heroes. They were supposed to be tough and gritty and pretty much we call them machines in the cog. Like, they were supposed to be the guys that protect us from everything. And we see that, but as time went on, we noticed that there had been a very significant change. And so, moving over to the 60s and to the 70s, we've seen filmmakers provide a new change of sense in terms of how we view masculinity. Now, I would like to use Grease, 1970 movie adaptation of the musical, as a foremost example because it shows us one of the primary examples of how we can take a tough guy and show that he actually has more of an emotional side too. Now, if you haven't seen the movie, I'll explain to you in very bare bones detail. Essentially, John Travolta, played as Danny Zuko, he is supposed to be a rough and tough, hard-nosed greaser boy who falls in love with Olivia Newton-John, or Sandy. And as we see throughout the movie, he's having an internal conflict with his own emotions because he doesn't know whether it's right to be a tough guy or whether it's okay to actually show some emotion and, fall in love. But one great instance in reality that more or less mirrors this emotional appeal to films actually arises in the 60s and 70s peace protests. Now, at this time, America has been very sick of war. They were sick of the Vietnam War. They didn't want to see our soldiers going to have to die in countries for reasons we don't know. And as we see here, with these people going out and protesting, they're protesting for peace. They don't want any war. They just want to live in a world where peace can be achieved and we don't have to just show ourselves, especially men, we don't have to show ourselves as just gritty, hard characters anymore. We don't need to. And so, moving again now to the final shift into the modern day of film, we see now that filmmakers have now produced movies that now go into the inner psyche of man, showing that not only do men not have to show a hard, gritty exterior, but they can also show like a more emotionally appealing interior as well. Valdi Viratama of the Jakarta Post actually wrote in a 2019 article saying that men in modern film today are been more emotionally complex, that they're actually changing the film industry, and that they are revealing the vulnerabilities that resonate with everyday struggles. And we definitely see this in popular movies such as, I'm already forgetting the movie. Thank you, A Star is Born. As we see the character played by Bradley Cooper has struggled with alcoholism due to his decreasing fame and the rise of Lady Gaga's fame. I know that's not her name in the movie, but please forgive me. Now, in the modern day, in the real world, we also see this as the rise of awareness of mental issues, showing that it's not just, like, men also get affected by mental issues such as addiction and depression. And it shows that men now don't necessarily have to man up in order to get through their problems, or they don't have to just hide themselves under a veil of manliness or just being tough all the time. It shows that men, just like everybody else, we have strong emotions too, and we can convey them. We just don't need any outside biases having to affect us. And so I'd like to end this by saying that throughout this cultural shift that we have seen, both in film and in real life, we have seen that there has been a significant shift in our view of masculinity. And so I would like to end with one question that may or may not be on our minds, but that is, what will be next for the ever-changing view of masculinity? Thank you.